This is Jim White on Guam. This is Tuesday, July the 21st here. Mr. Stewart, there's several questions I want to ask you. One is a question which I hope we will have some favorable answer to. That is pertaining to the 25% post differential. Recently in a local newspaper, we noticed that the cost of living allowance, which is being used in Hawaii and Alaska, would from now on be tax exempt, and it would also be retroactive to 1949. Now, we have wondered whether or not the TPD was not also tax exempt. In discussing it with various people over here, we get some humorous remarks about it. They say that in Hawaii it's the cost of living, over here it's the lack of living. Well, I guess it has a humorous slant to it at that. But we would like to know whether or not our TPD is tax exempt. We hope that you can give us some reply on that in the very near future. If by any chance that is favorable, we would also like to have some additional information, and that would be how it would apply to the ungraded employee who has a built-in TPD. We don't draw it as such, but it's supposed to be built into our hourly rate. We know that the graded employee has a definite 25%, but the ungraded does not. Would you let us know on that also? Guam has become a virtual rumor factory over here. It's quite hard to determine what is fact and what isn't. However, I've traced down several things which I find are based on fact, and I'll explain to you what they are. One is that the dependent housing on the island furnished by the Navy will be increased up to its former high at the time we wrote our first open letter. This was brought out in the Public Works Center staff conference about a week ago. It was told by Commander McKinney of the Industrial Relations Office, who said it would be much less painful this time as it was going up by gradual stages. It would be similar to cutting off a dog's tail a number of times to shorten it to the desired length. Last March, the signers of the open letter were called up to Kalmar to meet with Captain Carlson to work out a uniform rental for all federal housing on the island of Guam. We were there on an advisory capacity where we didn't agree with all the prices which they had arrived at. It was certainly nothing like the rents that were established prior to the writing of our open letter. Now, I don't think the Navy has been on this up and up with the organizations that were represented at that time, because when we sat in on that in an advisory capacity, we should certainly be informed of what was the final outcome prior to its being released as a directive to the rank and file on the island. Another thing that will cause considerable unrest on Guam is all-NAV directive adding $1.05 a day to our present meals on Guam. We are now paying $8 rental charge, a $35 mess charge, and $1.20 a day for our meals. I understand that an additional $1.05 a day will be imposed on us the beginning of the month. To a great many people on Guam, that is going to be a burden which they will be unable to stand. A lot of people are here on Guam and maintaining their families in the States, and they're on a limited budget due to the cost of maintaining their families there and themselves here, and it will be unprofitable to continue to work for the government on Guam. The problem with a lot of them is to how to get out of their present contract, since it's binding only on the employee. To break a contract on Guam will cost anywhere from $600 to $1,000. You must reimburse the Navy for your transportation over, as well as the time of travel, and also pay your own expense back to the States. Very few of them can afford that, and I don't know what the solution will be. Maybe you can give us some help on it. I told you the last time I sent a tape that we were no longer allowed to go to the States for the purpose of taking leave. Well, now something else has come up regarding that. A number of people here on Guam who have been to the States and took leave and returned to Guam on a new contract are now having their vouchers returned with the notation that they had returned to the States for the purpose of taking leave, and therefore their per diem and travel within the United States had been disallowed. In a case of this kind, the contract which we sign, or our employment agreement as it's sometimes called over here, is binding on the Navy only to return us to our point of hire after the completion of our contract. This business of going to the States for the purpose of taking leave is entirely new to most of us over here. We've had no occasion to go over the law, and it's been as much puzzle to the local Navy officials as it has to us, since they've interpreted it the way they have. However, in any case where the Attorney General has disallowed per diem and travel within the States, isn't it your interpretation that we must still be on the old contract and not on the new, since we have not, the Navy has not completed their end of the bargain? We have a test case on that now. The other day, one of our members received such a notice from the Attorney General that they were disallowing his per diem and travel within the States, as it appears that he was in the States primarily for leave purposes. As soon as he got the notice, he went right down to OIR, or CIRO over here, and told him he wanted to complete his contract. That's thrown him in quite a little uproar over here, and they've dispatched Washington for advice as to what to do. It remains to be seen what will come out of that. Right now, no one seems to care whether they remain on Guam or not. For the last 8 months or a year, everything that the Navy has done has taken away some of the benefits we've had by being employed on Guam. There used to be a time when there was an incentive for being here, more money, and things of that kind. However, there's been so much go on the last year that no one seems to care whether they stay here or not. And I'm sure if they would give a completion of contract that they would lose 2/3 of the people who are here now. I'm enclosing, along with this tape, a photostat of a letter I received from Captain Bailey, a few days ago. It gives me a pretty complete breakdown on the civil service and aliens on the island. I want you to check this. 1, 2, and 3 of this letter represent civil service only, and 4 through 8 are the alien employees. I want to go into this at greater length with Captain Bailey. I'm going to recommend that more realistic ceiling be set up for Guam that includes all the personnel necessary for the operation of Guam. I also want to recommend that in the categories 1 and 2 that it be increased as far as the civil service is concerned. That is your labor and trainee group. I think that it would be one of the points that we should stress very strongly, since there is considerable labor available locally, unskilled. We should set up a apprentice system or a trainee system on Guam, which would give local people training necessary to become journeyman mechanics at some later date. I think Guamanian people should be given the first chance at that, and later on trust territory personnel, and last Filipino. I think that's mandatory if they wish to operate a base here over a period of time, because the local people will be the cheapest source of help that they can get. We've been a little disappointed that Mr. Otley couldn't come on out to Guam. We would like to see him, like to go over our problems with him. I hope that you will get an opportunity to meet with Commander McKimmey of CIRO on Guam. He's a Navy man, but very civilian at heart, I believe. We have a good deal of faith in him, and we believe that he will present our picture over here exactly as it is. I hope that you have an opportunity to talk with him before he comes back. We didn't have a meeting over here during the month of July. The reason for that was that our club, where we formerly held our meetings, was being rebuilt, and there was no other place available that would hold the membership of NFFE. However, in the second Monday of August, we're going to have our regular meeting as usual. I would like to ask you to try, if possible, to get us a tape recording here prior to that time. Everybody's asked me about it, and if we would have it by the time we had our next meeting. If at all possible, will you try to do that for us? I hope that this system of corresponding with you is meeting with your full approval. It's much simpler to sit down and go over our problems via tape than it is by letter. We're awfully short of stenographic service over here. I think I've about concluded everything I wanted to tell you, so I'll be signing off as Jim White on Guam.